All right, Shadeed, Eleazer, welcome to the Masculine by Design Mancast. How are you doing this evening?
Life is good, Craig. It's good to be here on the Mancast and discuss the topic at hand.
Yes, and that topic is entrepreneurship, specifically masculine entrepreneurship. Our listeners here are predominantly going to be men. And as we're going to get into a little bit later in the podcast, we're going to talk about the unique situations that men find themselves in, how to manage those situations, being an entrepreneur, trying to build a business, lead a family, maybe work a day job as well. And we're going to get into all that. Before we start getting down that path, though, I'd like you to give our listeners a little bit of background about how you develop this mission of personal entrepreneurship and also helping others to build that mission as well.
Great question. Entrepreneurship is part of my story, part of my DNA. You see, when I first touched down on planet Earth, 10 toes on planet Earth, I was born into family business. So my earliest examples were everyone from grandma on down. In fact, my grandmother instilled in us the idea that family is the first business. For example, my cousin who can build an entire house by hand. If I was to go to Home Depot and hire a contractor without hiring family first, it would cause issues within the family. So from day one, we were raised with the mindset of working within. So my initial role models and work, for example, or work for a wage or a salary, those concepts were foreign to me. In fact, my thousands of hours over the years, and I don't remember a time where I was not working in family business. So it taught me a number of qualities, from you're treating your peers as family, for example, or building solid relationships, because when you're surrounded by people you trust in the development of your work habits, it tends to filter out into how you deal with the world as a whole. So in my adult life, my partnerships tend to be 10, 15, 20 years because I know how to vet people, because my earliest role models were those that I could trust.
That's excellent. Now, did you ever pursue working opportunities outside of the family business that you had there, or have you pretty much kept inside of there? Like, did you have like a fast food job or anything like that when you were a teenager?
Absolutely. Now, when we look at, let's say, the story of the prodigal son from the Bible, I definitely veered off the path of my family's business, rejected certain ideals with the whole mindset of wanting to create my own empire or just stake my own claim in the world. So that led to, of course, fast food jobs, that led to United States Navy, that led to a career in information technology and working as a consultant throughout the years. The difference is that with those early lessons, there was a seed that was planted in that I view employment as essentially being a spy. So what is a spy? A spy is an individual who is retained by either an empire, a government, or some sort of agency or entity. And their job is to infiltrate the enemy lines, gather intel, and bring it across back home in order to help gain an advantage. So when I look at employment, I think about going into companies and gathering valuable skills, attend the meetings, do the job, do the best job possible so that I can acquire everything that's gathered from that position, bring it back, and build my own platform. And that's been my mindset throughout every job that I've had. So when it came to employment, I viewed myself as a partner to the company. And what ultimately started to happen is, as I started to build up, let's say, my intellectual property or my knowledge network as an employee, many of the companies that I was employed by started to sponsor my events and sponsor my conference, the jobs that I've worked.
So are you currently employed by somebody, or are you self-employed?
Self-employed and for a number of years in terms of building my own firm and bringing out various teams. So since roughly 2011, I ventured out on my own. I was at a company that essentially was my dream job. I thought I reached the mountaintop. I actually applied for this position 2 times. The first time, the director of hiring, he's a bit of a alpha personality. I'm a bit of an alpha personality as well. And we clashed on the phone, actually hung up on the guy during the interview. So needless to say, that did not go well for me. So the second time around, I actually made it through the hiring process and landed the jobs. So I felt like I was part of the New York Yankees. I'm on the dream team. I made it. And so in that particular position, a funny thing happened is they gave us so much responsibility in terms of putting together our own deals and handling our own accounts and landing our own projects and negotiating our own contracts. So you have your own, let's say, tier of projects or your own pipeline. And so I asked myself, I said, wait a minute, if I'm negotiating my own deals, I'm managing my own pipeline, and I'm traveling to these various sites, why don't I start to do this on my own? Now, I had a stint before where I went on my own, but I didn't know so much what I was doing. But this was the time where I felt that the time was right. So from that point on, not only have I managed my own firm, but I also set forth on my mission to help men and women to take the ideas that, let's say, they love and escape from careers or job paths that don't serve them or they hate.
Yeah. So how much guts or intestinal fortitude did it take for you to make that leap? I mean, were you in a position where when you went from working for somebody else to being self-employed, where you were kind of doing a leap of faith, or did you have a pretty good clientele base built up already and kind of knew it was going to work out? Because I know a lot of guys, myself included, I have a day job. I'm working to build some side income that I hope to make my full-time income at some point in time. And a lot of guys do it that way, right? They have their main source of income and then something else that they're passionate about and they're trying to build. And hopefully one day that overtakes their current main source of income. But one of the struggles is, at what point do you, shed the first one and make the second one your main source of providing for yourself and your family? Was that something that you struggled with, or did you have a pretty good base built already?
Well, Craig, since we're on the man cast, this is the time where I'm supposed to put on the veneer of bravado and tell you it's no problem. Now, I'm a martial artist. I spend the majority of my free time grappling with cage fighters and other grapplers. And I'm a military war veteran. And I will tell you without any shadow of a doubt that going on my own was one of the scariest decisions I've ever made. Every moment or every morning that I woke up when I went on my own, it literally felt like from the time I opened my eyes, if you think about the movie Groundhog Day, when the alarm goes off, that was in my life. It felt like I started my first breath with the refrigerator on my chest. So the anxiety was so high. What am I going to do? Where are my next projects going to come from? That I would go to the local track and I would just walk around the track until that feeling went away. So when we talk about the idea of deciding when to break away from it's not actually what I follow. But if I was to do it again, I'd be a little bit smarter. And let's look at what I did right. What I did before I went on my own was I invested in my knowledge network. I invested in my relationship. So I went on meetup.com, for example. And since 2007, I hosted a monthly meetup within my industry. So experts, beginners, I became the source of knowledge acquisition, of connecting, let's say, top level individuals with someone who's just getting started. I became the conduit through which knowledge and expertise and connections begin to flow. So I started that off years before I actually decided to go on my own. So if the question is, was it easier? My answer would be, it became easier because when everyone else was watching Netflix or playing sports or sleeping or resting after work, I was going out hosting events, let's say speaking at events and hosting conferences and investing in the network that I wanted to build. So when it became time for me to launch my business, yes, it was scary. However, because I invested that time, it made it I had a bit more leverage and connections that I could actually reach out to. And my first contracts actually came from people who discovered that I was going on my own and made a few introductions on my behalf that I didn't even realize at the time. But it's like, wait a minute, that's where those first opportunities came from. So definitely look at what you can do today. You can go to meetup.com. You can start a podcast. You can essentially build the stage by which people in your industry can basically promote themselves and grow and learn. I like to use the analogy of Saturday Night Live, in which every comic who is someone has come across the Saturday Night Live stage as a proving ground. So within your industry, you can always create an event series. You can always create a podcast where you give people the opportunity to share their story, and you give people who are just learning the opportunity to get started or spark innovation and or creativity.
Absolutely. Now, I've known you for quite a while, Shadeed. You know, you're a brother in the Fraternity of Excellence, and we've had a number of video chats. This may have come up before, but I can't remember if it has. Are you married? Do you have children?
I am aspiring. I believe in love, Craig, and it's going to happen. However, it has to happen with the right lady, and she is on her way. But I do believe in marriage. I do believe in family 100%, just not married yet, but it is a goal.
Yeah, on your terms, right?
I need, and once I do get married, Craig, I want a whole starting five. I want 5 kids, whole basketball team, starting 5, and live on a large property and teach them all to build businesses and do
Oh, man, that's awesome. Yeah, I asked that because I just wanted to get that back. I didn't know if when you made that leap, if you also had, a wife and kids to, worry about having to provide for or not, because that obviously adds some complications to the matter. Now, one of the things that I noticed with a lot of guys, so, inside of the Fraternity of Excellence, that's where I engage with guys most often. And I know you're inside of there. I'm sure you see this as well, but there's all the time, there are men in there who are making comments about how they want to find out what is it that they can give to the world. What are they uniquely equipped to give in terms of value to their fellow man, and obviously get an exchange of value in return, typically a monetary value. And they really struggle with finding what that is that they have to give that they could build a business around. So a man who's in that situation, what advice would you give him on how to find what that is that he is uniquely equipped to give and to start down that path of building that empire?
The journey of self-fulfillment through purpose or self-actualization is the journey that every man must take in order to realize his innate potential. Entrepreneurship is such a wonderful gift to a man because entrepreneurship is a personality trait. It's not something you do. It is something you are. It's simply expressed through the operation of a business. You can be an employee and have a CEO all your assignments to a developer or to some other student, and breaking the benefits from there. So the CEO mindset exists as a personality trait that can be expressed through anything that you do. When you look at establishing your purpose as it applies to entrepreneurship, it's more or less the cart before the horse, because you have to understand what your overall purpose is, and then that is expressed through entrepreneurship. So what I like to do in order to determine purpose is exactly how I got to this point, which is service, serving others to discover who you are. So when I gave the analogy or the story of working within my family business, all those years of sweating and toiling away, there were nights where I've cleaned toilets. There were nights where I was the janitor. There were days where I was the cashier. There were days I dealt with people I didn't like. And guess what? Those all tied to janitorial services, waiter. It can be a number of different occupations. So I knew right away, I've had maybe 52 occupations that I did not like. So going through and vetting those occupations let me know that this is the path that I want to take. I want to help business owners maximize their revenue. I want to help them discover the ideas and help them grow. So for the gentlemen who are within the fraternity, as well as those who are watching and listening to the podcast now, you have to get your hands dirty. I'll give you a resource. Go to volunteermatch.org. And what volunteermatch.org is, gentlemen, is a search engine, a database of nonprofit organizations who are short-staffed. They will bring you on 100% free and allow you to test out the ideas that you want to bring to the world. They need the help. And the value of this is that if you actually become good at it, or you actually deliver value to that nonprofit organization, what begins to happen is they'll give you a letter of recommendation. They'll give you a LinkedIn recommendation. And they may also bring you on as a full-time employee. So I would recommend that you date around in terms of what your passion is. If you sit there on top of a mountain and you say, I wonder what my passion is, that is not throwing something against the wall to see what sticks. You have to take action. You have to get your hands dirty. And in order to get your hands dirty, as they say, you have to kiss a few frogs before you find a princess. And you don't find a princess by sitting there and looking at the frogs. So that's what you need to do, is take action. Take 3-week projects with Volunteer Match or 1-month projects and just work down the line. Get an idea of what interests you, what excites you, what keeps you up at night, what do you like to work on endlessly, what would you like to build from start to finish. These are all questions that you can ask yourself as you start to determine what path you want to take. Once that becomes clearer to you, and if you are a person who struggles with making a decision, as many men tend to be when they're younger, or they are, let's say, making a big transition after a divorce or maybe a huge weight loss, that's where your circle of trust starts to come in. The Fraternity of Excellence, for example, is an excellent place where you can go in and ask those questions. And you have individuals like Craig, you have Hunter, you have me, who will definitely take the time to say, well, based on what our conversations are, what I know about you, you should try coding. You should try mechanic work. You should be an engineer. And once you have that feedback, based also combined with what you love to do, then you can vet those talents in the real world through short projects on Volunteer Match. And that's just one resource. You can search for many others, but Volunteer Match has helped me and hundreds of other people that I've recommended to it.
So Shadeed, just so we're clear now, you're saying that watching sports, playing video games, watching Netflix all night, this is not how you find your purpose. Because I often, and I'm being facetious, obviously, but I often talk to these guys and I ask them, well, what are you doing, right? Well, how are you spending your time? And it's like, well, I go to work at a job that I really can't stand, and then I come home and I play video games with my buddies for 3 or 4 hours, and I masturbate to porn, and I go to sleep and do it all again the next day. And it's like, well, how in the world do you expect to find purpose when you're doing nothing but consuming? You're not producing, you're not adding value. And I agree with you, man. And a lot of times too, though, guys don't know where to start. I mean, if that's your life, right? If that's what you're doing, and that's why they don't know. They have no idea what value they have to give because they're doing nothing of value in their lives. Like I said, they're just consuming. And that first step is very important. So I love that I'd never heard of volunteermatch.org. It's a great resource there. Who cares if you're not getting paid? You're getting paid in the equity of finding what it is that you are passionate about and what you can eventually build and get paid for in the future. So yeah, I love that advice. Now, one of the things that guys struggle with, I've struggled with this myself and overcome it largely at this point because I built a network of men who truly want to see me succeed, and they help me along. You and I just had a call, a week and a half ago, where you gave me free advice. You genuinely just wanted to see me excel and to achieve my goals, which is most appreciated, by the way. But I found that I've gathered men around me who are of similar mind, and I'm doing that for others as well. But what a lot of guys experience, and I did as well, when you first start going down this path of you're breaking free, right? You're stopping those habits of getting drunk all the time, playing video games, smoking weed, and you start going a different direction. All those guys that are so used to having you around, engaging in those behaviors with them, they're trying to pull you back and grasping at your ankles as you're trying to climb the ladder. What advice would you give for men who are going to deal with that? How do you deal with those friendships that maybe you've had for a long time, maybe since you were a child, and now you're trying to break free of those influences so that you can better yourself?
This is an excellent question. This is the question, in that, in my personal experience, being ex-Navy especially, I had the rare opportunity to have the exact same peer group, same buddies that I had when I was stationed overseas, and we all magically ended up back in the same U.S. state after we were done being stationed together. Now, the Navy lifestyle is a bit wild, Craig. It's a bit unpredictable in that everyone from your supervisor on down, when they go out, it's work hard, it's play hard, and the whole idea is to make it back in one piece and do the job. No matter, put your coveralls over your clothes and just go to work. So that culture coming back to the civilian world was something that I was a part of day in and day out. So I also, along the way, as I mentioned, I've always been entrepreneurial minded. So I was the first person in my peer group to buy a home. So while in the military, I saved up a bunch of money. And when I got back to the US, I bought a home. So 23-year-old, single as can be, homeowner. So when you're a homeowner at 23 and your peer group is still figuring out 7 people in an apartment or, college dorm room lifestyle, there's a bit of a shift in priorities that tends to occur. And what I started to realize in running and operating what I like to call my first real business was that after a night on the town or after a hangover, it was impossible to wake up and try to be a functional business owner. Now, 23, 24-year-old, I was nowhere near at the caliber that I am today. So at that time, it was just impossible to bounce back and try to get into the rhythm of running a business. So I had to make a decision. Part of that was some health reasons, and that at around 25, 26, the lifestyle started to catch up with me. And I had a ulcer at that age from so much happy hour lifestyle. So I had to slow down. I made the decision at the tender age of 26, Craig, to retire from the nightlife. And let me tell you, you would have thought I was Oliver North, the way that my friends claimed that I betrayed them, that I'm stepping away from the brotherhood. And
You've
how could
changed,
you
man.
do this? They question my loyalty. You changed. You don't hang out anymore. What, do you have a girlfriend now? What is going on here? And so that was the story. And it actually took, and keep in mind, I wasn't as successful and say, well, I've made $10,000 in my business. I was still trying to figure it out. And so the hatred, or let's say the animosity, was even greater as a result, because you're not hanging with us to do what? And so when you look at your situation, for those of you who are tuning into this broadcast, you have to look at what your priorities are, what you want to accomplish. And you have different types of friends. And you have to understand, this was something that I realized well into my 30s, is that you have different types of friends. There are friends who are proximity friends, meaning you have friendships based on, let's say, neighborhood affiliations you may have played sports with. And every time you, let's say, reconnect with them, the discussion is about the good old days. Remember when we played as kids, or remember when you scored that touchdown? That's great. And every time you try to move forward, they're going to pull you back to those old moments. Then you have friends who are friends of, let's say, a moment in time. And that can be based on coworkers. That can be based on, let's say, if you train at the same gym, and once you change jobs or change gyms, that bond falls apart. And the final type of friend is the friends for a lifetime. So it's the sidekick. It's Rocky and Apollo Creed. It's those individuals who, no matter what you become in life, they find a way to complement that which you are. So the first thing you have to do is understand what types of friends you have. It doesn't mean that they're good friends or bad friends. Some friends are just locked in the time, and you have to move forward or limit your time with them. Love them from a distance, is what I like to say. And get yourself around people who support you based on what you're attempting to be. So take inventory of your friends, define who you want to be and what you want to do in terms of entrepreneurship, in terms of your career path, and most importantly, in terms of your health. Because if you are around people who support your entrepreneurial goals, but you have the habits that, like I said, my hangovers completely derailed and had. So my habits, in order to enjoy stepping forward and being successful.
Yeah, I see a lot of guys too, and I dealt with this, man, where they almost feel ashamed because they're leaving their friends behind. But you can't have that mindset. Like you said, you have to have that mindset of, this is what I want out of life. These guys can come with me, and I hope they will. But whether they do or don't, this is what I'm convicted to do, and I'm going to move forward with that regardless. And you can't let shame hold you back. Because there's nothing to be ashamed of. What are you ashamed of? You're ashamed of following your vision for your life? That's not something to be ashamed of. In fact, you should be ashamed when you don't do that. Now, Shadeed, I want to move into talking about some somewhat practical steps that guys who are thinking about starting a business, maybe guys who are already going down that path, can start using to better that aspiration that they have, or better their chances of being successful at that aspiration. One of the things that men who are considering becoming entrepreneurs often will use to excuse away why they don't begin going down that path is that they don't have a lot of money. They don't have a lot of disposable income to put toward this new startup idea they have, and they think that it takes money to make money. You can't just jump in without a decent sized budget to work with. And what would you say to those guys? Are there opportunities out there for men who don't have an expansive budget to work with?
Yes. The number one strategy that I recommend is what I like to call the collaboration partnership. So what you do is the following. You have an idea. You have friends and or colleagues, associates who also have ideas. What you need to do is to form collaborative partnerships with individuals who are looking to be enterprising and build. The hardest thing that exists within entrepreneurship is the idea that a man must exist on an island on his own. That's the slowest, the most expensive way to build anything. What you do, you either start in a garage, you go to the library free of charge and reserve a conference room within the library. You meet at your favorite coffee shop and you simply get together and define your visions together. Now, you don't necessarily have to partner up and start a business. What you do is you look at what your high value skills are and what you bring to the table, and you collaborate or provide complementary value to each other. So if one business owner, we'll call Jake. If Jake is a graphic designer and we have Jerry, who's a project manager, then Jake's graphic design skills will help to provide the visual layer to Jerry's project management business. Whereas the second example with our project manager, he'll provide the structure, the organization to Jake's projects so that they both complement each other, they both grow. And the key here with this collaborative model is you don't necessarily charge your brother in building the businesses. You go into it all for one. Where many people go wrong is they get dollar signs in their head right away and they think about a transactional relationship. You'll get a lot farther by building collaborative partnerships, working within a co-op of individuals and share resources, strengthen each other's businesses. So you form an informal mastermind group. I would recommend that you meet regularly. I would recommend that you take meeting notes and you discuss and collaborate on ideas. Many of the top firms or billion-dollar businesses, social media platforms were formed out of think tanks of that nature. It may not have been what they all came together for originally, but the ripple effect of that led to other businesses.
I can absolutely attest to what you just said. I've been doing various things online in order to earn a side income for over a decade now. And for most of that decade, I was going it alone and, made some progress. But once I really started reaching out and building a network, which I want to talk to you about here in just a few minutes, joining with other men particularly who have similar interests, men, as I mentioned earlier, that truly want to see me succeed and I want to see them succeed. The difference is it's night and day. There is no comparison between because it's not just the knowledge that's gained. There's also an air of accountability there. You have somebody who's holding you accountable to what you're professing to them that you want to do, and they're going to keep following up with you. They're going to make sure that you're doing the things you're saying you want to do, and that right there is huge. Now, you mentioned having a value or skills that you bring to the table in those partnerships, and one of the things that a lot of younger men in particular will struggle with is understanding what that value is that they have to give, as we talked about earlier. And a lot of men, young men, they get intimidated by the fact that they're young, right? How do I sell myself? How do I sell my skills as an 18-year-old to people who are decades older than me and wiser than me? Who am I that they would want to purchase something that I have to offer? What would you say to a young man who's struggling with that?
Young men tuning into this broadcast, I want you to realize something. There are men and women who exist on this planet today who became adults on this planet without ever seeing social media in motion. Meaning, there are a group of people 50 and older who went through grade school, high school, college, and then social media came along. So it is a topic, a subject, a technology, a skill set that is foreign to them, like speaking a second language or learning a second language for the first time. You, young go-getter, young hustler, young entrepreneur, young man, were raised with the smartphone, with social media, so you are fluent in this skill set. If you know nothing else, or if you feel that other areas of your credibility need development, or you need more credibility in those areas, always take inventory, take stock in the fact that you can explain social media to a multimillionaire and they will find value in that. In fact, the average business owner in the United States, over 50% of business owners in the United States are over 50 years old. The average age for startups, so individuals who start companies in the United States, is 40 years old. So entrepreneurs who are 18 to 29 are roughly 16% of the United States entrepreneurship population. So you being a young business owner, a young go-getter, you're a rarity. I know it's easy to look at Instagram and entrepreneur go-getter videos and feel like everyone's doing this. But when you look at the wide range of individuals who watch soy flicks and they sit back and play video games all day, you have to realize that you are the rarity. So the next point that I like to make is that using your point in time where you are in your journey is also a rallying point of credibility, in that you can approach small businesses and say, listen, I am the fastest growing freelancer in Facebook ads, or I'm the fastest growing graphic designer amongst millennials. So you reframe it as I'm on the rise, and you give people, older entrepreneurs, the opportunity to buy into the opportunity to work with you on the ground floor. Here's a secret that I like to share with you. Older entrepreneurs love to help younger entrepreneurs. You want to know why? It's because when you exhibit the qualities that make you unique, when you exhibit your genius, it sparks something in them, because the older entrepreneur, you, in your example, in your progress, in your path, it reminds them of when they got started. And them helping you also helps them to right the wrong decisions that they've made, and they get to tune in. It's like playing a video game, in that you get to say, well, how would I navigate today's entrepreneurial landscape? I made $2 million without social media. What would I be able to do in a social media era? And through advising you, through mentoring you, through working with you, you give them the opportunity to contribute to the cycle of giving, the law of reciprocity, where someone helped them, someone opened the door when they were young and enterprising, and now they can give back to help you. But if you maintain the mindset that I'm not good enough, I'm not enough, I don't have the credibility, I'm just a rookie, then you prevent the cycle of giving that was already set up for you throughout the end of time. It's a universal law. You need to play the game by just simply stepping forward with authenticity and just saying, hey, I'm the fastest growing thing in town. You might want to play along, and here's what I can do for you. Lead with value.
Yeah, I have a special place in my heart, man, for these 16, 17, 18-year-olds. One of my biggest regrets as a man is the time that I spent, I went to college, I got an engineering degree that's proved to be pretty valuable for me. I have a good job, I make a good living. But one of my biggest regrets is just going down that path almost mindlessly. It was just, I chose to go on that path, and I did it, and I did it successfully. But when I hit 25 and I really started thinking about the fact that I don't want to sit in a cubicle, my entire career. I want to have something that is uniquely mine that I'm giving to the world and being paid for it. And one of my biggest regrets is not working from the time I was 17 or 18 on building that part of my being, of my existence as a man. And that age in particular is just so pivotal. I mean, the guy who is 18 years old and starts going down that path of building his empire, building a business, by the time he is 25, he has 7 years leg up on all of his peers who, like you just said, the majority of whom are playing video games. They're doing what I was doing. They're just mindlessly going to their classes, and maybe they're working hard. It's not that I wasn't working hard. It's just I wasn't really looking at everything that was out there. I had blinders on to this narrow field of the scope of what I wanted to achieve, and there was so much more there that I was blinded to. And yeah, I just have a heart for young men because I want to see them achieve their potential. And I don't think there's much better time in a man's life to start going down that path than when he's that age. He doesn't have a wife. He doesn't have kids. He doesn't have a lot of responsibilities. Start putting yourself out there and really exploring the landscape and all the opportunities. I mean, you just mentioned it, man. I mean, when I was 18, there was no Facebook, no Twitter. It was hard to build a network, right? Today, there is no excuse. I mean, guys have access to millionaires who will respond to their messages online. I mean, it is truly amazing, the opportunities and the resources that are available to all of us today. But to be 18 years old, man, the world is your oyster. Get after it, man. That is, I have a heart for men at that age, and I hope that any of you listening who are that age, I know most of my audience is probably a little bit older than that. I hope that you take that to heart and start listening to what Shadeed is saying and find what it is that you have a value to give to the world and get after it.
Absolutely.
All right, Shadeed. So the next thing I want to talk about is the man who has his sights set on a business. So he's figured out what it is he wants to do. He's still putting some of the pieces together, but he at least knows the direction he wants to go. What are some of the most critical steps that he can be doing from the outset to set himself up for success?
The number one aspect that separates a successful business from a business with an out of sales sign on the door is market research. So when we talk about market research, what many business owners, what many men tend to do is they create bright idea businesses. I have an inspiration. I think it's going to change the world. Let me go and buy the domain name and reserve that. Let me build the website. Let me build the Facebook profile. Let me set up all my social media. And by the time they get around, they realize that, number one, no one has an interest in what they have to offer. Number two, no one is willing to pay for it. Number three, there's no established price point for them to actually buy into. So this is where market research comes into play. What you want to create is a customer avatar, and your customer avatar is essentially going to be like building a video game player for your business. And this avatar will consist of the gender, the education level, the salary range, the interest, the content that individual consumes, to the level of detail where when you're discussing that customer avatar within a group meeting or within your collaborative, your co-op, as I mentioned, if you follow that step, you actually describe your avatar by name. So Jake likes video games, or Jake wouldn't buy this, or Jake would totally go for this particular product or service. Next, you need to invest your waking hours, some portion of that, in the online communities where Jake would actually spend time. So you think about who your target audience is and where they spend their time. Facebook groups are a gold mine. LinkedIn groups are a gold mine as well. Quora is a gold mine as well. Reddit, these are all platforms where people share their challenges, what keeps them up at night, and spend a part of your time there. And once you start to understand what the market is calling for, then you start to look at your products and services and a gap that exists that you can actually build some sort of, let's say, market share or put a dent or impact in the market by offering your product. I would also add that putting together focus groups is an excellent way to determine and gather testimonials for your product or service and actually gain feedback before it is released. So your focus group would consist of going on social media and saying, hey, I'm looking to work with project managers who are in between the ages of 25 to 49 to ask 5 to 10 questions on a product that solves time management for project managers. Do you have 5 minutes to complete a quick survey? You complete that survey, and once you go through, let's say, 5 to 10 focus groups or focus group interviews, then you invite them back for either the product, the service, or the course, and you guide them through that process free of charge. You allow them to go through the process. And in exchange for testimonials or a video or written write-up of that particular product, service, or course. And you rinse and repeat. You go through that process and you gather enough testimonials, you gather enough partners so that when you finally launch, your product is validated, you have a price point that people are willing to pay for, and you get started with momentum, as opposed to, I have a great idea, it's going to change the world, and then you wonder why no one cares about what you have to offer. So that would be the first place I would start. Market research is a daily part of my outreach strategy, my social media strategy. And if your business is to succeed, you have to use market research. Look at the examples of successful companies such as Apple, Amazon, and look at how they're able to gather feedback from their audience. Look at how they release products, and you'll gather the secrets and the magic behind why they have such longevity and such a high level of performance within the marketplace.
All right. So for the entrepreneur starting off, doing market research, trying to find out, is their idea viable? And that's such good advice. I mean, nothing feels worse than dumping hundreds of hours or thousands of hours into something and hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars, only to find out that what seemed like such a great idea to you, other people don't think it's such a great idea. Now, in terms of that investment, I think you definitely made a very good case for that being a worthwhile investment. Now, what about investments that you see entrepreneurs making that are mistakes? You know, ways that they're investing their time and their money, either up front or even as they're in the process, they have a good foundation built and they're trying to grow. What are some of the mistakes that you see in the ways that entrepreneurs are investing their time and their money?
I'll share with you the top two, and they both have to do with time. Number one is they suffer from positive procrastination. And positive procrastination is the idea that the courses that we buy, the YouTube videos that we consume, the books that we read are moving us forward within our business, but all they are placebos that prevent us from getting the actual results that we need. So if you take an assessment of a given day, there may be an entrepreneur, let's say that individual, that gentleman is out of work, for example, and this is the golden time to launch the business because unemployment's about to run out and running out of options and just motivated to make a change. Maybe the gentleman listened to this podcast, for example, example, and just got the fire to launch their business. So he watches the podcast or he listens to the podcast, he watches the YouTube videos, and at the end of it, after 5 hours of viewing this content, there's no product on the shelf, there's no offer delivered, there's no cold calls that are made, so there's no forward progress. The second major area is social media. Everyone has some form of social media account unless they have a strict, let's say, minimalist policy or religious policy. And we're often taught that social media for business is the right decision to make. It's a step in the right direction. You need to get your message out. You need to share your message with your audience and reach millions around the world. And what happens is many entrepreneurs do not have defined social media objectives. They do not have revenue goals. They do not have a destination to which they want to enroll the social media followers or attention that they gain. If a tweet or post goes viral, they have no destination to route that audience to the next step. And if you're going to be successful, you have to have a defined strategy. Are you looking to build your email list? Are you looking to create partnerships? Are you looking to network and get yourself to the highest tier? What you often see online is there's lack of clarity with social media platforms. So a person can be selling, let's say, gym equipment, for example, or personal training services. And if you go down the timeline and view the last 25 tweets, there's a ton of arguments about Donald Trump and what he may be doing in the news, or the latest news on Miley Cyrus, or whatever gossip topic is at the moment. And there's zero focus on how that business owner's content or unique knowledge can solve problems within the mind of the target audience.
Very good advice. Very good advice. Yeah, one of the things that I've noticed as of late, I've tried to get more targeted in when I tweet, not just targeted with the message, but also when I notice a tweet is starting to blow up, I'll put a reply to my own tweet that will, say, hey, I got a newsletter coming out on this exact topic tomorrow. Sign up for my newsletter. I had a tweet, and I don't know what's considered viral. I don't know. It had like over 1,000 likes and something like 400 retweets. And I got like 50 email subscribers just from that tweet because it blew up. And I even was kind of slow on the draw. I don't think I added that call to action underneath it until it had already gotten about a third of that. So yeah, you're exactly right. What are your objectives, right? Social media is not effective if you're just there posting random thoughts about your pets or the food you're eating and all that stuff. I mean, it's not that nobody cares about that, but I actually did a YouTube video about this maybe a week or two ago, talking exactly this. If you could gain 20,000 followers by just posting random thoughts online, but when it's time to actually market to those people, you are going to fail miserably because they have no idea who you are or what you stand for, and whatever you're selling, probably 10% of those followers are even going to be interested in it because you didn't build an audience that is around what you are marketing or what your core values are. So that's great advice. Now, I want to talk about, speaking of Twitter, I follow you. I followed you for a long time now, and I was doing some stalking of your timeline here before preparing for this podcast, and you had a tweet on there that I found very interesting. It was an African proverb, and it said, "Cross the river in a crowd, and the crocodile won't eat you." And I thought that was very interesting. Can you expand on that concept, what you were communicating with that?
Yes, the crocodile is a metaphor. Crocodile is failure. The crocodile is bills. The crocodile is, let's say, starting an idea without market research. The crocodile is any roadblock that you will face in this journey of the peaks and valleys of building your own empire. So when you're going down that path, the crocodile is going to look for the animal that is on their own, that is weak, and look to attack that particular animal. So the biggest mistake that you can make in entrepreneurship is to lean on your own understanding, is to have the mindset that I'm going to figure it out myself, is to also think about I'm going to build my empire because I don't need anybody else to help me out. I have this all figured out. I don't want to take any outside coaching. I don't want to accept any outside advice from my peers. I simply don't need anyone to build. So you may be strong in one particular area. You may even be strong in 2 or 3. But when life delivers the body shot or the knockout blow, that's when the crocodile will strike. So when you have wise counsel around you, when you're part of mastermind groups, when you're continuously in communication with individuals who know your potential, who understand where you're vulnerable, and they're willing to supplement that with their own knowledge, their skills, ability, and most importantly, their time, then what happens is you become a unit. So the crocodile may only see an individual, but you're represented by the network behind you. And when the crocodile sees that there's a group of individuals that are crossing in unison, then it's harder to attack because you can see every vantage point, you can see where the vulnerabilities are, and that increases your overall readiness and success.
Yeah, there's there's power in having a network. And one of the struggles that I had, like I said, I went lone wolf for quite a while. It was how do I entice men to join my network, right? And I struggled with that for a little while, and I'll let you comment on it before I give my take. But I wanted to hear your thoughts on how does a man go about building a network, especially a guy who's just starting out. He maybe doesn't have this lengthy resume of things that he can point to and say, hey, here's why you should want to, join me in some mastermind group, or even just engage with me in direct messages to try to exchange some value here and there. How does the guy go about doing that?
Great question. So every man should be focused each and every day on the development of a high income skill. So skill set development is of ultimate importance. If we look at men 40 years ago, functional skills was a requirement. You had to be of utility. You had to know how to fix things, build things, contribute. And men of our grandparents' era did not have the option to say, I don't know how to build, fix, or be valuable. From early on in life, survival dictated that they had to be valuable. So when we flash forward to today, technology, the lack of strong male role models created a reality where men grew up without the need to learn skills. Now, in today's world, you need high income skills. And if you start to think, what is a high income skill? I want you to take it back to the basics and say, what problems exist, or what do I want to be? And then you strip that away and say, what skills does it take in order to accomplish that? Now, every industry has, let's say, its skill sets that are in demand. So you can go down the path of learning a skill that is in high demand, or you can go in the direction of learning a skill that absolutely motivates you, entices you, and captivates you to continue to learn on that path. So once you have your skill and you practice that every day, you then reach out to individuals and you lead with value. So when you lead with value, this means that you give first. Now, this may be counterintuitive. You may have the story when you gave to someone and they burned you, they broke your heart. She ran off with the dog, the pickup truck, and the whole sad story. However, when you're dealing with highly influential people, when you're dealing with highly successful men or women, they are bombarded with individuals who take first. What can I get from that person? What can I get? So their direct messages are filled with the same information. Can you give me this? And there's no relationship established. When you lead with value, you say, Well, I observed that you are looking to build a community center. And I understand social media in a way that will help you to gain attention, to gain followers, to gain supporters and donors for your community center. I observed your social media profile, and you only have 3 followers, and it's only been updated 6 months ago. I can set up a scheduling app to help you get your message out to the world. So in that example, I'm reaching out to someone who's successful. I've identified what their goal is based on their timeline. I've also observed what they're currently doing to get to that goal. Then I'm offering, without any pay, any expectation, or any sort of hidden agenda, a game plan, a clear picture that allows them to reach their goal through the bridge or the passport of the skills that I deliver. And most importantly, you have to set up the full picture. So you give them the vision of what it's going to look like when you work together. So I will help you to gain donors for your community center. I will help you to gain supporters, followers, to help your community center go to life. I will schedule social media updates in order to help your message be consistent and allow for greater outreach of your message to improve the public standing of your community center. So when you're looking to build a community of men, you have to be the individual who puts the flag in the ground and says, I'm valuable. This is what I bring to the table through my high income skills. And you start to attract new members to your tribe by pouring value on them. And you start to say, okay, I recognize the talent within you. Come join my tribe, and we're going to work on developing that together. You may say, well, when is it time to have people pour value on me? The reality is that when you give to others and you make that a habit, the law of reciprocity works exponentially. So you give, you give, you give, and then when it's time for you to finally have a request, what tends to happen is because you've delivered wins for other people, when it's time for you to get the assist for the win, people, because you've helped them or you've helped them to see things about themselves that they did not realize, they will go the extra mile in order to help you.
Absolutely. And you have to get used to rejection too. I found, when I started down that path, I think the first probably dozen men that I reached out to either ignored me or, blew me off in a way that was just kind of a little bit more cordial without just giving me the finger, right? I'm too busy, which I get it. I mean, I'm no giant online or anything like that. I have less than 10,000 Twitter followers, and I'm inundated with people messaging me. So I can only imagine some of these guys that I was reaching out to that had 2, 3, 4 times the following. And at the time, it kind of pissed me off. I'm like, man, what a jerk. The guy doesn't even give me the time of day to hear me out. But now that I've kind of grown a little bit of a following myself, I completely get it. So, you guys who are listening, when you go down that path, you start reaching out to men, don't take offense to it. It's nothing personal. But I am a big believer that everything happens for a reason, and you will find the men who you are meant to connect with and who will allow you to exchange that value that will help them and help you. But don't give up, because it can be tough. You're going to reach out to a lot of guys and maybe only get a few hits. Same thing in the dating field, right? You're going to get rejected by 9 out of 10 girls, but if you give up after the first one, you're never going to get to that 10th one, and who knows what might come of that, right? All right, so Shadeed, we've had do you have something to add?
Let me add on to that analogy really quickly. When you are in the dating game versus entrepreneurship, if you look at everything as transactional, I must get, you lose the thrill of the chase. When you go out and you simply say, I'm going to go out with my friends and I'm going to have the best night ever. And when you go into the bar, you compliment people, you give high fives, you buy drinks over here, and you just have fun with your friends. What tends to happen is because you're delivering so much value, people are going to want to be a part of what party you're bringing to the table, because you're bringing life to the environment. So when you're dealing with reaching out to influencers, millionaires, high status people, you want to look to upgrade their situation. And if they say no, you have the value and abundance mindset to begin with. So you just move on to the next individual to deliver value to.
Exactly right. It's often talked about as being outcome independent, right? You are focusing on a process, on living the way that you want to live, and you are going to do that regardless if somebody responds positively to it or not, because you know it's the right thing for you. And so you keep doing that, and eventually the right people find you, and things eventually work out, as long as you don't give up, of course. Now, I want to talk to you, Shadeed. We've had a great discussion so far. I think I don't know, the time we're up a little over an hour, I think. I want to end this discussion by talking about aspects of masculinity and how that relates to men engaged in entrepreneurship. Despite what the mainstream media outlets will tell us, anybody who is being objectively honest with what's going on around us can see that there are obvious differences between men and women. And I want to talk about, for the men listening, for men who are going down that road of being an entrepreneur, what can they do to use the aspects that are unique to their masculinity to help them succeed in business?
It is a man's nature to build. It is a man's nature to create. It is within a man's nature to manage. Whenever that balance is impacted, it affects masculine nature. When you look at the man's journey from boy into man in becoming who they are to be, entrepreneurship is the natural evolution of masculinity. In that, when you determine who you are and you determine your values and what you stand for, the vehicle by which that is to be expressed is known as entrepreneurship. So again, you can be an employee with an entrepreneurial mindset. You can be an employee and have several side businesses. The key is to understand what your core values are. One thing I'd like to point out is that every 7-figure and below business, so any business, let's say, that is $999,999 and below, operates in the exact core values of its business owner. The personality types, what they're willing to accept, not accept, the personality and tone of the company, corporate culture, is all reflection of the business owner. So you, as an aspiring or current entrepreneur, you need to understand and get pure clarity on what you're willing to stand for, what you're willing to not tolerate, what will, let's say, evict someone from your work scenario, what type of empire or home or castle you want to build. What you'll find is that the authenticity or the message that you project to the world as a man will often be the exact mirror that is reflected in how you do business. How you do one thing, as they say, is how you do everything. And as a man, it is very important to be who you are, follow through with your commitments. And if you say you're going to do it, you have to deliver that. Now, this may be a message that your grandfather said 20 years ago, and you'll find that in entrepreneurship, those same qualities tend to come up again in the entrepreneurs who are ultimately successful, take those foundations and they build upon those through the vehicle of expressing entrepreneurship. So for men who are out there and they're looking to get started and they're looking to build that empire, you have to go back to the basics and you have to determine what makes you unique, what would make you successful, and most importantly, your core values. And you build your business around that foundation. Get in tune with who you are as a man, get help if needed, fraternity of excellence, many other resources. In addition to that, there's books you can read to take you further. And then once that's solid, document it. And then that is the house of which your business is built.
Yeah, I want to hone in a little bit on what you said at the outset of that answer, which was excellent, by the way. You talked about men having an innate need to create. And I cannot help but draw what I think is an obvious connection between the amount of depression and anxiety that's going on in the lives of men today and how that connects with how little they're producing and how much they're consuming. And I truly do believe that for a majority of these men who are dealing with these states of depression, that getting out there and producing and creating and using their minds and building with their hands is a cure for that. And I don't mean that lightly. I literally mean it as a cure for that. I've seen it. I have seen men who have had no drive, no purpose, no ambition, nothing they're creating, start going down that path of creating. I've seen guys just start a blog and they've had something to do with their mind that wasn't just completely sucking up useless information. They were actually thinking and creating, and it cured them. It truly did. It gave them a sense of purpose, a sense of value. It led to other things much greater than just having a blog that they would write their thoughts on. Do you agree with that?
Well, we live in the world of the most distractions in human history. There's more distractions now than at any point. 20 years ago, a teenager would not be on their phone, switching radio channels and driving with their knee at the same time while texting. So when we look at the distractions, many of the distractions are taking away from the masculine life force. So everything from pornography to excessive consumption of television and video games. In times past, there were less distractions, so you have to be outside and you have to socialize with people. You have to get, vitamin D from the sun. So these are all factors, and we live in a voyeuristic society where we consume success porn. So we watch others, we watch the success through reality TV and through YouTube, and we tend to idolize individuals instead of saying, well, that's a great idea that I just saw. What can I build from that? And if we get back to a society of being builders, most importantly, and creators, then you'll find that depression as a whole will start to decrease, because when you are actively engaged in moving forward, it's difficult to allow the clouds of depression to engulf you.
Yeah, I think the way that I view depression, I may have heard somebody say it this way before. I'm probably going to paraphrase it, but it's a focus on past indiscretions or past failures. Whereas as soon as you start focusing on what can I do in the future, what is it that I can be doing to craft reality into the vision that I have for it, you purge that depression from your being. You can't be depressed while also working to make your world a better place in your mind. You can't do it. When you have a vision and you're trying to achieve that vision and it's a positive one, there is no room for depression anymore. So Shadeed, I want to talk to you about the family man real quick. So family, the man who has a wife, he's got kids. This describes me perfectly. I know exactly the situation. I have 3 children. They're 6, 8, and 10. I have a wife of 12 and a half years, a day job that typically requires me about 50 hours a week between in the office and working at home. I have this, quote unquote side hustle that I work on and giving value to men inside of the fraternity of excellence, producing podcasts, writing blog posts, trying to manage social media, all these things, right? And at times, we were talking before I started recording, it can feel overwhelming. I just want to toss this phone sometimes and be like, look, I'm just tired of being connected all the time. And all, like you just said, the distractions go along with this, man. This thing beeping and lighting up and vying for my attention all the time. And I've certainly done some things to help eliminate that distraction when I want to focus on my wife and children. But it is a grind, man. It truly is. I mean, I haven't actually logged hours to it in quite some time, but it's probably 75, 80 hours a week that I'm working, that I'm coaching my kids and just trying to lead the family and maintain frame in that regard. And I know you aren't married yet. You don't have kids. You said you are aspiring toward that. But what advice can you give for guys who are going to have that challenge as well? The challenge of having a wife and children that are dependent upon him to lead and provide, while also trying to build their own empire.
As the leader of your own empire, you have to be extra cautious and respectful of the trust that your family instills in you. So when we talk about bright ideas not being business models, and we talk about the idea of utilizing market research, there's a delicate balance that you have to play in that you're going to have entrepreneurship aspirations. As I mentioned, entrepreneurship is something you are. So you may have had a business, or you may have wanted to start a business, and you met that special someone, and poof, family's on the table, and now your priorities shift. But that hunger still exists. You're in the garage, you're in the office, you're in the bedroom on the laptop, and you're still wanting to build that business. There's a few things that you have to understand. Number one is that your wife, your girlfriend, did not. She may support you as entrepreneurship is the spark that she was attracted to when you met her. So in many cases, you'll find the common argument being, well, you met me when I was doing this, and now through the erosion of frame, now he's trying to battle back that respect, and things have shifted. So she may have been attracted to the person you were because entrepreneurship is an expression. So when you're delivering or you're creating, there's a spark that is attractive. But you have to also realize that your wife, your partner, your lady is not your business partner. So she may support certain aspects, but that does not mean she wants to give up her Saturday and hand out flyers. That does not mean she wants to put the metallic sign on the side of the car and drive around. It does not mean that she wants to be at the booth on a weekend at the flea market. So understand that support for your partner is different from your calling as an entrepreneur. And it's very important that you understand that your schedule will have peaks, valleys, adjustments, and changes. It is your duty as the leader of the household to communicate what those changes will be and the impact that it's going to have. You should not compromise what it is you need to do to be successful. But if you fail to communicate that, then what will happen is you'll have a power struggle within the household, because you're taking away from family time. You're taking away from the attention that's needed to maintain a healthy relationship. And it seems like you're not maintaining frame. Finally, every woman tests a guy in order to determine if he's worthy. So this goes back to prehistoric times, where a woman had to make sure that a man was physically strong in order to protect the house from invaders and or predatory animals. So this goes back to the Flintstone times. So when it comes to entrepreneurship, you have to keep in mind that your lady, she's seen you when you had the multi-level marketing business. She's seen you when you wanted to be the coach. She's seen you when you bought the home gym and you never used it. So she's seen all of the incarnations of who you were and along the path. So when you say, I am an entrepreneur, you have to keep in mind that you're competing against who you were 10 years ago, 5 years ago, and all the ups and downs and breaking of promises and breaking of frame, because she was there through that whole entire time. So when you say you're an entrepreneur, what you have to do, the solution to this is to give time, show and prove, communicate, and allow for time to elapse, because you're competing with the old version of you. And when you finally start to break through and show and prove, and for many ladies, that may just be being successful, but in having that breakthrough. But during those times when you're building to that point, you have to understand that she's seen you before and she understands all the things you failed at. And now you're coming back and you're saying, well, I'm the same person, but this is different this time. And that just doesn't make sense when you start to look at it that way. And so the other part of this that I want to close on, entrepreneurship is a family affair. So when it comes to your children, you want to incorporate them into the process as much as possible. That does not mean that they need to hold a sign up at the corner for traffic that goes by. What this means is you make entrepreneurship part of the daily routine. So if you have a new DVD release, you explain to them that we're filling out orders, and you go on a field trip, you take them with you, and you allow them to put the padded mailers in the mailbox, give them a high five, and keep them involved in the process. When you have a victory, you go out for ice cream. When you have a loss or a setback in business, you discuss what that loss is, how it affects the family, and lead it with a teachable lesson to always bounce back, believe in your dreams, and teach them the value that daddy is a creator, daddy is taking his own destiny, and that son or daughter can do it as well. If you treat entrepreneurship as a full family affair, what you'll find is that you'll teach lessons to your children through your example that no other path can teach.
You know, Shadeed, before I came downstairs to record this with you, my son, he's 6. And one night we were having one of our Zoom video chats in the Fraternity of Excellence. He makes his way downstairs and, peeks over and waves hi to all the men, and they're waving hi back and saying, "What's up, little man?" And so he knew I was coming down here, and he wanted to make an appearance. He said, "Dad, can I come down and say hi to everybody like I did last time?" And I told him no, but it would have been perfect if you just come down here and give it a nice wave to you here at the end of our podcast. But yeah, absolutely true. And one thing I would also like to add is that Hunter talks a lot about, and I agree with this, that we make sacrifices. I am not going to be as productive in my entrepreneurial endeavors as a husband with a day job and 3 kids and all of those responsibilities. I can't go comparing myself to the guy who this is his full-time job. This is what he's doing. That's not an excuse, but it's just a matter of time that's available to work on what you're building. However, what I will also say is that if you have a woman who is submissive, who is supportive of your mission, it is a huge boon to what you're trying to do. And I'll be honest, if I was a father of the 3 kids that I have and I didn't have my wife by my side supporting me in this mission, I wouldn't be down here right now recording this video. She is upstairs tending to the home. She is managing the home. She's tending to the kids and making sure their needs are met and that they are cared for, and allowing me to pursue the mission that I have for both myself and, as you well said, my family, because this isn't just about me. This is my mission. I'm the one doing it, but they are part of that mission, and certainly part of the impetus behind what I'm trying to build. So very well said. I just wanted to add that on because a lot of guys struggle with that. And I'll also say too, Shadeed, you well pointed out the matter of frame. That is a challenge in and of itself, because I am taking time away from my wife and kids, and a wife will only deal with that for so long without seeing some kind of production from that, right? Some tangible benefit from that. And my wife has been very gracious in that regard, because I've been doing things to kind of build additional revenue streams, and hadn't had a lot of success for quite a while, and she had been very supportive of me. And that's, if you have a wife that is not as supportive, you need to be prepared for that. I'm not telling you not to pursue a mission. I'm not telling you to go after that, but you are going to need to invest time in making your wife understand the why you are doing what you are doing, how it benefits her, and like you said, Shadeed, bring her along for the ride. So She is aware of what's going on, what you're working on, what your vision is, where you're taking yourself and the family with you. And that will go a long way, especially because she is going to test you, just like you said. Is this time really different, right? Hey, the last time you spent 2 years and nothing came of it, and now you're 6 months in, is this time really different, right, on this venture? And it is important that as a man, you maintain that frame and you have that vision and that she sees that. So that's all I have for you, Shadeed. Man, that's a great conversation. I really appreciate you coming on. I think there's going to be a lot of men listen to this who get a ton of value out of it. Even men who are not entrepreneurs, I think this will open their eyes to a lot of the aspects that go into that. And hopefully some men who are kind of on the fence will hear this and decide to take that jump, because I do believe it is very powerful in shaping a man, shaping his character, giving him something that he can uniquely give to the world. And there are few things that are a blessing like that is to a man's life. So before we drop off, Shadeed, where can our listeners go to connect with you, follow you on social media, get more of your content, maybe have you as their coach if you'd be willing to do that?
Well, it all starts with my email list, the business advisory email list, where we discuss small business simplified. So the advanced fundamentals of business with stories, case studies, and all based on a true story. You can text the word self-made to 44222. That is self-made, no spaces, self-made to 44222 for the daily business advisory email where we discuss small business simplified. And you can follow me on social media at Mr. Shadeed. That is spelled MRSHAD like David, EED like David. I encourage you to not be a fly on the wall, interact, reply, direct messages. In that, I allocate a lot of my time to help young men to get to the next level, clear out roadblocks, and I'd be happy to do so for you.
Yes, and I will add, Shadeed is a man who is giving value at every opportunity. He is a guy that you definitely want to connect with. You can learn a lot from him. And I know that all of you listening have done that today. So thank you again for coming on, Shadeed. Hopefully we can do this again sometime. I think it was a fantastic discussion, and I think there's still plenty more we could have fleshed out.
Oh, yes. This was time well spent. And thank you to the audience of the Mancast for tuning in. And make sure you connect with Craig's work on a deeper level as well as mine.
All right. Thanks, Shadeed. Appreciate it, man.
Thank you.